This meeting is now being recorded. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the monthly meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board. Ask for your patience as we get everyone in place and ready to begin. I will call the meeting to order in just a few minutes. Mr. Pardon and Mr. Gary, are we ready to begin our meeting?
I believe so, Chairman Hilton.
The first thing on our agenda this morning is a public hearing. This public hearing has been held by the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board. It's called to order and has been held pursuant to KRS Chapter 77 and district regulations. Notice of this hearing has been published pursuant to state law. This public hearing has been held by video teleconference due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Instructions on making written and oral statements by video teleconference have been distributed. Oral statements must be presented today. All statements should be concise. All statements will become a part of the hearing record. There is one enforceable board agreement and one agreed board order to be reviewed today. Would the staff please present the enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric? Let's go back. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. I'm Matt King. I'm the manager of the district's industrial permitting section. Today, the district brings for the board's consideration an agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric to limit daily nitrogen oxide emissions, or NOx emissions, to 15 tons per day at the Mill Creek Generating Station, located between Dixie Highway and the Ohio River in the southern part of the county. Jefferson County was designated non-attainment for the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for ozone. Ozone is produced when nitrogen oxides, or NOx, combined with volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, in the presence of sunlight and converts into ozone. Previous evaluations show that our area is NOx limited, and that means that reductions in NOx will have a bigger impact on lowering those ambient ozone concentrations. NOx is produced when fossil fuels are combusted, and Mill Creek is our largest stationary source of NOx in the county. As such an important source of air pollution, LG&E has a good understanding of their effects their operations to produce electricity have on air quality. So you all have seen a similar agreement to this before. This is the third year LG&E has been willing to agree to this 15 ton per day NOx limit. As with the past agreements, there are inclusions for allowable exceedances of that limit for system outages or other reliability issues. But they have met that agreement for the past 2 years without the need for those exceptions. This agreement, unlike the others, which were one-year agreements, does not have a specific termination date. The agreement will be terminated upon notification by LG&E of the retirement of either units 1 or 2 of the 4 units at Mill Creek. A retirement of either of those units would have a significant reduction in potential emissions, and we would want to revisit this agreement at that time. APCD is in the process of requesting redesignation back into attainment for this ozone standard. Our most recent 3-year average, what's known as a design value, is below that standard, but we are not officially designated back into attainment. We anticipate that occurring, but this area will and has had ozone challenges for years. So these types of agreements are greatly appreciated by the district, and we believe have a big impact on achieving attainment with that standard. We did receive one written comment on this agreement that was provided to board members, and the district recommends the board adopt this order as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mudd, has a representative of LG&E registered to make a statement this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Mr. Gary, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Has any member of the public registered to make a statement this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has any member of the public submitted a written statement?
Yes, Chairman Hilton. That was distributed to the board prior to this meeting.
Okay. Are there any members of the public in the Addison room that wish to make a statement or make a comment? If so, raise your hand and you will be called upon. One, okay. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference? Seeing none. Does anyone wish to speak? While the district reviews the list.
I'm not seeing any participants with raised hands, Chairman Hilton.
Okay. Moving forward, would the staff please present the agreed board order with Playnex Company Incorporated?
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. The district brings for the board's consideration an agreement with Playnex Company, Inc., which is working as the general contractor of a renovation project at the Heritage Green apartment complex on Southside Drive. The district alleges that Playnex failed to follow federal emission standards for asbestos, including failure to thoroughly inspect areas for asbestos, failure to notify the district prior to disturbing asbestos, and failure to adequately wet asbestos-containing materials during removal and prior to disposal. On August 3rd, 2020, a district compliance officer conducted an asbestos inspection at the Heritage Green Apartments and observed a large pile of potential asbestos-containing material in the parking lot between buildings of the apartment complex. She took samples of materials present in the pile and in areas where renovation work was occurring to take to a lab for determination of asbestos content, and advised Playnex staff that the pile likely contained asbestos and should be kept wet and covered. Lab results were received a few days later and confirmed that materials in the pile and work areas contained asbestos. On August 17th, 2020, the district conducted a follow-up inspection and observed that the debris pile had not been wetted or covered. Following this inspection, a licensed asbestos contractor was hired and performed the cleanup following federal work practice standards. Waste manifest from the cleanup indicated that the pile contained 150 cubic yards of waste. The company has continued to work with a licensed asbestos contractor to survey further renovations and abate asbestos where needed. The company has agreed to pay a penalty of $7,500 to resolve the notice of violation. The district recommends the board adopt the order as proposed.
Any questions? Has a representative of Playnex registered to make a statement this morning?
No.
Has any member of the public registered to make a statement this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Okay. Has any member of the public registered to submit a written statement?
No, Chairman Hilton.
I just have one question. Where is this apartment located? What part of the city is this?
So it's Southside Drive, kind of by the naval ordinance, Iroquois Hill,
So that's
airport area, south side of town.
south. Okay, thank you.
I
Are
have
there
some
any members
concerns.
of the public in the Edison room that wish to make a comment? Hearing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference?
Members of the public can raise their hand using that feature in WebEx. I do not see any raised hands.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, Chairman Hilton. It's Dr. May.
Okay, Dr. May.
First, I was concerned that there was a 2-week lag time, before we, in the follow-up inspection, and so that was an ongoing hazard to the public.
Right.
Second concern is that the company is a out-of-area company, and so may or may not be familiar with what the regulations are, such as notifying APCD. And so when contractors are hired, they complete ignorance, to those, to those regulations, and so, but the thing is the workers who were hired to do the demolition work and so forth are, people that live in our area. And so this may be beyond our jurisdiction area, but is there any kind of process so that way companies are more responsive to what the issues are when they are an out-of-state company or contractor?
Mr. Beck?
Dr. May, the asbestos rules that they violated are a national rule across the whole United States, has the same requirements for working with asbestos. We have some additional requirements, but the regulations that they have violated are national rules. And as far as workers on contractors that are not familiar with asbestos, OSHA requires a familiarity type training for any type of renovation maintenance workers. So they should, anyone in the contracting field should be familiar with asbestos rules.
So that's where I'm concerned that it is known, but it was still performed, and hope that they didn't get caught, And so, I feel like the fine is a slap on the wrist, but the, health consequences potentially for the people who work there, the people who live in that area, because when it's not wetted down and covered, it can be aerosolized to the general public area, and small amounts are not, but it's not well defined how much people are going to have contact with, but it is a deadly substance.
The joint action here. Can you?
I just have one question. Is the contractor responsible to make sure that all the workers are certified to handle asbestos?
So the contractor, unless they are licensed to handle asbestos, should not be handling asbestos. They hire that out to a subcontractor that is a licensed subcontractor. They are responsible through OSHA rules for having their employees be trained for, familiarity. So that if they are doing work that should not have asbestos involvement and they see something that might be asbestos, they're supposed to be trained to pull back and say, hey, we need to look at this a little farther. Dr. May, to address your question about the size of this violation, they are not the only, Planex is not the only party involved with this notice of violation. We're also citing a management company and the owner of the property. They have chosen not to settle at this time, and we are continuing legal actions with them.
And they're required to have a demolition permit through the metro?
So they may be required to get some type of renovation permit for like electrical work and that kind of stuff to other parts of the city, but they're required to thoroughly, anytime any residential of more than 4 unit commercial or industrial building, any renovations are supposed to have thorough inspections beforehand to prevent.
So that was a violation as well? Okay.
And just to clarify too, it's not like the whole area is being demolished. There's still, it's like piece by piece in terms of the complex, and so there's still residents in that area.
As far as these buildings were concerned, there were not residents living in these buildings that were involved with this violation, but there were residents living in the apartment complex. It's not a single one standing building, it's multiple buildings, but yes, there were residents in the complex around the pile.
Mm-hmm. And that's my concern, is that there's, the 2-week lag before you've, where they didn't, once made aware of this situation, that they still didn't do anything, to me is very bad.
Thank you, Dr. May.
Thank you, Dr. May. Are there any other questions or comments from any other board members? Well, if not, we will move on. I will now call the regular meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board to order. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, we are conducting the monthly meeting today via video teleconference. First thing on the agenda, we call to order, do we have a quorum today? And I will conduct a roll call of board members that are present on this teleconference. When I call your name, please say here. Steve Sullivan.
Here.
Dr. Colbert.
Here.
Dr. May.
Here.
Candace White,
Here.
thank you, and Marissa Neal.
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Hampton, do we have any introductions this morning?
Yes, we do, Chairman Hilton, thank you. It is a pleasure this morning to welcome Dr. Daniel Garst, the Air Pollution Control Board's newest member. And Mr. Gary, if you would, share a little bit about Dr. Garst's background.
Yes, thank you, Director Hamilton. Dr. Garst joins us as a Louisville native. He left Louisville for a little while to study civil engineering at the University of Virginia before switching tracks and becoming a clinical psychiatrist, receiving a degree in 1983 from the University of Louisville before going on to become a resident physician at Vanderbilt and briefly an instructor at University of Louisville. He now resides in Louisville and is in private practice. Thank you very much, Dr. Garst, for joining us.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you.
You want to say a few words?
I don't have anything particular to add right now.
Okay. Well, on behalf of the board, welcome to the Louisville Metro Area Pollution Control Board, and thank you for your willingness to volunteer to serve on this board.
Very welcome.
If you have any questions, you can either call Mrs. Hampton or myself. Thank you very much. Moving on, we at the approval of the minutes. The public meeting held on public recognitions, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. So, as I mentioned to the board last month, Keith Talley, the district's former director, will be leaving Metro government at the conclusion of this year's budget process to become the executive director of Holm. We actually have him here in the flesh, and this is a brief sighting, so enjoy it while it lasts. It is my privilege to recognize Keith this morning for his commitment to the district, to our work, and that of the other agencies in the community building cabinet that he's been leading now for Metro. I speak on behalf of all the district. We will miss you, but we look forward to the good and beneficial work that you'll do at Holm, because we know the impact of your leadership. We wish you well. Don't be a stranger. Keith?
Christine, you'll be between Steve and Director Hamilton.
You know, I really wasn't planning on getting up here, but I did want to take the opportunity just to say how appreciative I am of having been able to work with this board at APCD and the staff at APCD. It has been an incredible opportunity, an incredible learning opportunity for me. The chance to work with such dedicated, knowledgeable, experienced folks is the only way that I could have had any success at all. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you guys for supporting me through my work here at APCD. And I know you will continue that work under the leadership of Rachel Hamilton, Michelle, and Matt, and Steve, and all the other folks here at APCD, because you really need to name each and every last person, because they all contribute to the good work that is done here. So, again, just wanted to thank you, and I look forward to the new chapter of my life, an opportunity to go back to a little bit of finance work that I did previously, and I hope to continue to do good things in the community. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. On behalf of the board, Mr. Childs, I'd like to thank you for your leadership and support of the board. Also, the board would like to wish you the very best in your new job assignment. And Mr. Talley was responsible for recruiting me to be on the board in year 2015. Thank you. And I really appreciate him talking to me and asking me would I be willing to serve. So we wishing you the very best in your new job assignment. Thank you very much.
And thank you for saying yes.
All right. Moving right along, we have the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the public hearing held on March 16th, 2022 were distributed electronically for your review. Are there any changes to the minutes to board members?
Not for me.
Hearing none, okay. Are there any changes? Nothing? I hear no changes, no comments? Okay. Mhm. So we also have the regular meeting minutes that were also distributed electronically that was held on March 16th. Are there any changes to the minutes by board members?
Not for me.
Hearing none, the minutes of the public hearing and regular meeting are approved. Thank you very much. Now we're at the public comment period. Has anyone registered to make a comment this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has anyone provided written comments?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Okay. Are there any members of the public in the Edison room that wish to make a comment? Are there other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference? Please raise your hand by teleconference and you will be called upon. There's a feature you can find on your phone to hit star 3 and you will be recognized. Does anyone wish to make a statement?
I see no raised hands, Chairman Hilton.
Thank you. That completes the public comment portion of the meeting. Unfinished business, there is no unfinished business today. New business, we have the enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric. The district has recommended that the board adopt the enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric. Is there a motion to adopt the agreement? Thank you, Dr. Colbert. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Sullivan, second it. Okay. I will now take a roll call. Are there any questions or comments regarding the report? Board members?
Not for me.
None? I will now take a roll call. Please unmute your microphone and say yes if you wish to adopt their disagreement with LG&E, and no if you do not. Steve Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Colbert?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. May?
Yes.
Thank you. Candace White? Yes. Thank you. Marissa O'Neill? Thank you. And Dr. Daniel Gorsh?
Yes.
Thank you. The agreement with LG&E is approved and adopted. Thank you very much. We also have an agreed board order with Planex Company Incorporated. The district has recommended that the board adopt the agreed board order with Planex Company. Is there a motion to adopt this order?
Also move.
Steve Sullivan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dr. Colbert. Any discussions or comments from board members? Hearing none, I will now take a roll call vote. Please unmute your mic and say yes if you wish to adopt the agreed board order with Planex Company. And if you do not, just say no. Steve Sullivan?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Colbert?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. May?
Yes.
Thank you. Candace White?
Yes.
Thank you. Marissa O'Neill?
Yes.
Thank you. And Dr. Daniel Gorsh?
Yes.
Thank you. The agreed board with Planex Company has been approved and has been adopted. Thank you all so much. Now we're at the committee reports. We had no committee reports this morning, or no committee have met since the last meeting. Now we're at the director's report. Mrs. Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Chairman Hilton. I'm pleased to report that Jefferson County continues to maintain its green or low COVID community level. And while we have returned to in-person meetings, and I'm very pleased to see so many board members here in person this morning, and I will note the last time I think I saw Dr. Coburn was March of 2020. So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Please continue to review the agenda each month for instructions on how to attend and participate in the Air Pollution Control Board's upcoming meetings. Speaking of community events, we are really excited to be back out in public. Last week, I think we've actually met about a quarter of our annual commitment for speaking engagements when Michelle King, APCD's Executive Administrator and Director of Program Planning, and Byron Gary, APCD's Regulatory Coordinator and Secretary Treasurer of our board, presented to EPA's State and Local Programs Group at the Office of Air Quality and Planning and Standards, and to representatives from EPA's Region 4 offices about the district's Air Quality Action Partner Program. You'll hear a little bit more about that later this morning. Ms. King shared a presentation on the Air Quality Index and how air pollution affects health as part of the quarterly public health and wellness training. Ms. King, Mr. Gary, and Dee Lynch, APCD's Community Outreach Coordinator, presented to KIPS's Transportation Technical Coordinating Committee on ozone. And Byron, Michelle, and I presented an ozone update to Greater Louisville, Inc. Finally, on Saturday, a number of APCD staff, including Ms. King, Ms. Lynch, and Ben Jacobs, I believe, helped welcome spring at this past Saturday's Trees Fest celebration at Joe Creason Park. Last night, Ms. King, Mr. Gary, and Matt Mudd, APCD's Communications Coordinator, shared a really informative presentation called Ozone, Good Up High, Bad Nearby. Know what an air quality alert means to your health, especially if you have asthma, COPD, allergies, don't we all? That was the title, to the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, and it was really well received. I do want to mention that the week before, on April 6th, the district, the fire department, public health and wellness, the Metropolitan Sewer District, and the Emergency Management Agency were invited to speak at a community meeting in the Beachmont neighborhood about an emergency response and odor issue. That neighborhood on March 11th awoke to a release from a nearby facility called Allnex of 3,100 pounds of styrene monomer to the sewer system. Styrene has a very low odor threshold, and when it went into the combined stormwater system, the vapors and odor became widespread throughout the neighborhood. The release, which as I said took place in the early morning, was reported to the fire department by those residents. This triggered an emergency response under the Louisville Metro Hazardous Materials Ordinance, during which the incident commander, the responding fire department official, assessed the incident and called in other trained first responders, in this case, MSD, Public Health and Wellness, and the Emergency Management Agency, to address the release. MSD began flushing the sewer system. They took air samples within the wastewater system, and Public Health and Wellness took ambient air samples, and they both advised the incident commander about next steps, such as continuing to flush the sewer system and also whether to shelter in place. These agencies are all hazmat trained, certified, well-practiced, and well-equipped in responding to these types of emergencies. The district is not a first responder agency. We are not specially hazmat trained, but we may be called in to assist in an emergency incident by the incident commander due to our knowledge of stationary sources, our community-wide ambient air monitoring network, and our advanced weather system and meteorologists. In this case, we were not. We received a call about odors later in the morning, but called our compliance officer back to the office when we learned that it was an active emergency response. We'll wait for the fire department to call us if we're needed. MSD, as the administering agency for the hazardous materials ordinance, will be evaluating the release and determining whether to assess the civil penalty for a violation of the ordinance, including timely reporting of the incident to 911, compliance with the ordinance's hazardous materials spill control plan elements, and MSD's own rules, which, among other things, prohibit air pollution, toxic or malodorous gases or malodorous gas-producing substances from being discharged into the sewer system. The district will be evaluating whether the release violated any of the district's rules, permit terms and conditions for ALMEC, including timely reporting of the release under APCD Regulation 107. As with any investigation, if it results in a violation, it will be added to the board's enforcement list, and ultimately, the resolution will be made publicly available. Any questions about that?
So any action that APCD would take, is that separate from, for example, MSD's enforcement action?
Yes.
I have a question. You referred to Regulations 107. Is that comparable to the National Response Center if you exceed the reportable quantities?
The National Response Center requirement stands alone.
Stands alone, okay.
It actually is incorporated into the hazardous materials ordinance here in Louisville. If you release a reportable quantity, that is a defined term in the federal regulations of a material, and that reportable quantity is based on the toxicity of a material or its explosivity or other characteristic, corrosivity or other hazard, and it varies from some substances such as mercury, the 1 pound reportable quantity threshold. For styrene, it's 100 or 1,000 pounds.
Okay.
Toluene, American Synthetic Rubber Company had a 150-gallon spill of toluene the other evening to a drain, and it has a 1,000-pound reportable quantity as well. So once you hit that reportable quantity, you have to call 911 under the hazardous materials report it to the NRC within 15 minutes. The Regulation 107 is different. That is our own regulation. If you have to call 911, you owe us a report under 107 that an event has occurred within 2 hours.
They have to have a written report to you within 2 hours?
They can call us.
Notify.
They can notify us. They can send us a fax. They can call us. They can email us. But if you call 911, we have a notification coming to us within 2 hours. If the release is less than a reportable quantity, that notification is due to the district within an hour if excess emissions are expected to occur. In this case, both companies did report under Reg 107.
Okay.
So this is an aside. It is something that we'll be bringing to the board a little bit later, but there's a lot of confusion in the community about how to report odors and then how to find out information about emergency incidents. Small, perhaps more frequent than we would expect, but nonetheless, not large enough for the media, for example, or the public information personnel at the Emergency Management Agency to have a interview about what happened. We'll take the first one because it's a little easier. If anyone ever experiences an odor that causes you to leave your home or causes you to have health impacts, you're coughing, you can't catch your breath, your eyes are watering, the first thing you need to do is dial 911. APCD is not a first responding agency. You need to have those first responders who are trained to stop that incident from happening out there. If an odor is objectionable, if it's causing you annoyance, that's the word from our regulation, call us and we'll investigate. But I can't stress enough, if you think that odor is impacting your house, your body, call 911.
Okay.
with respect to finding out about hazardous material incidents, you know, we have a system called Lens Alert here in Louisville, and if you sign up for it, and there is a hazardous materials incident or other hazard near your home, can be weather. We get those quite frequently. You receive a text or other notification to your phone. Many times, there is a hazardous materials release. That incident commander goes out, he assesses the situation, and he tells Lens Alert, no further action by the public is needed. The situation is under control and there is no harm. For some in our Rubbertown community, they get a lot of those, but they don't know how to follow up with what actually happened. They just see sirens, they receive a Lens Alert, and then it's very difficult for them to find out, was it a big event or a little event? Was it two guys fighting in the parking lot, which, believe it or not, has happened? Was it a car that caught on fire in a parking lot at a facility? That's happened too. Or is it a company who's having small releases that are indicative of a worrisome trend? So we've been working with a group of our first responding professionals here in Metro government in an attempt to try to figure out a better way to let people know what happened. Unfortunately, the public is using our Regulation 107 reports, those initial reports that we get. For us, because we're not first responding agencies, we don't get the full details for 15 days. Your report that we provide to you with that excess emission report from the companies sometimes is helpful and sometimes it's a language of its own. So we hope to have some additional information to report to the public and the board about that transparency project, hopefully later this summer. Any other questions?
Just a clarification. So a facility that's not permitted by the district is still subject to enforcement if they have a spill?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members regarding this issue?
No.
All right, moving on. On Tuesday, April 12th, President Biden announced that his administration will temporarily allow E15 gasoline. That's gasoline that uses a 15% ethanol blend that's typically banned from sale from June to September because it may increase pollution, including ozone, to be sold this summer. And this measure is intended to help ease gas prices. I've seen estimates that may be potentially 10 cents a gallon. But until EPA actually issues the national fuel waiver for summertime gasoline, we're not able to determine how it might impact RFG, and that's the reformulated gas that we're required to use here in Louisville. It was waived during the summer of 2020 due to COVID, but EPA has some time before the June 1st deadline for prohibiting that sale of E15 blend. So look for an update on this at the May board meeting. Any questions on that?
I do. So data from 2020, did you see an increase in pollutant levels as a result of burning regular gas all year?
What we saw on, well, two things. We're going to talk a little bit more about ozone. So we continue to have our beneficial trend in ozone reduction. So our 2020 summer was another year where our trend line continued in the right direction, as well as 2021. We do know from our partners at KIPTA, the Kentuckiana Transportation. It's KIPTA. The transportation guys. Those transportation partners of ours tracked the reduction in vehicle miles traveled, and that was tracked by, different classes. What we did see was that we saw a reduction early on in commute, but that quickly rebounded, and we were back up to normal levels midsummer-ish. So it's a little unusual, but our trend continued in the right direction.
So this could it be impacted this year when things are kind of back to normal in regards to people on the road? And I'd be curious if, if the waiver has some is there any waiver related to air pollution?
That is something we're going to have to wait and see.
Okay.
So when we see that, you know, executive order is one thing. When the plan gets put into place by the people who have control of the actual fuel standards, we'll have to wait and see. This will create additional pollution. Our RFG is one of our mobile source control measures here. I do believe in some areas of the country, it's not going to improve the ozone situation. Here, largely because we do have LG&E optimizing their controls. Hopefully we won't see an exceedance, but I do need to talk about that. So moving on. Byron, if you're ready, I have a little something different to do today, and I hope that you'll indulge me. If this works well, please let me know. If it doesn't, please let me know. But as the board knows, the Louisville Metropolitan Statistical Area, which includes Clark and Floyd County in Indiana and portions of Bullitt and Oldham County here in Kentucky, was designated as marginal non-attainment effective August 3rd of 2018. Next slide, please. One more, please. All right. I know this is a little bit small, but I'm a big fan of, I'm a visual learner. I've told you all that before, and yet again, here's a map. So this map shows the areas of the country designated in 2018 by US EPA and their classifications. So for reference, oh, thank you so much. It's a little easier to see now, and I appreciate that. That brown area you see there, that's called extreme non-attainment. The design value in 2018 was 163 parts per billion and above. The sort of purple area that you see there is a severe 15 area. That design value was 105 up to 111 parts per billion. The serious non-attainment area, which is kind of that lavender color, it had a design value of 93 to 105 parts per billion. The moderate area, which is kind of that, a little hard to distinguish there, it's a little darker blue, that was 81 parts per billion up to 93. And then lastly, the marginal areas were between 71 and 81 parts per million. This map is from a fantastic resource available online. It's called US EPA's Green Book, because back in the day it truly was green. And it's linked on the slide. It was. I don't see it. We'll be sure before we post it to put that on there. You can find county by county comparative information about air quality and where communities are with respect to every national ambient air quality standard, including the old ones. I didn't add all the maps here for ozone, but there are communities who are not meeting the 2008 standard and also the 1997 standard as well. Many of those are in California, so if folks tell you that California has great air quality, they don't, and trust me on that. Okay, but you can compare data across the nation. It's a great resource, and it has awesome maps. Next slide, please. So as we've talked about before, the Clean Air Act required marginal non-attainment areas to demonstrate attainment based on air quality monitoring data using a 2018 to 2020 design value. And that's the time period immediately preceding the August 2021 attainment date. So these are the steps that a marginal non-attainment area is required to take. We've done all of those except demonstrate compliance with the standard by that August 21st, 2021 deadline. At the time, we were supposed to be 70 parts per billion or lower. We were at 72. Next slide, please. So what happens now that we, as a marginal non-attainment area, fail to show attainment by that deadline? Clean Air Act requires EPA to determine whether these areas Right now, there are 31 areas across the nation that didn't attain the standard using that 2018 to 2020 design value. And when they do that, take specified actions to ensure those areas achieve attainment expeditiously. So, on April 13th, US EPA proposed a specific action, namely bumping up and 23 other areas, including the Cincinnati Metropolitan Statistical Area, which includes 4 counties in Ohio and 2 in northern Kentucky, up to moderate non-attainment. A couple of these areas also are going to get bumped up to serious non-attainment for also failing to meet the 2008 ozone standard. That includes Chicago, Dallas, and Denver. So not to say other folks have a lot of work to do, we have a lot of work to do on our own. So areas reclassified to moderate face more protective Clean Air Act requirements designed to achieve attainment of the NAAQS by no later than August 3rd, 2024. So it also resets our attainment deadline. These requirements include stricter permitting requirements, implementing reasonably achievable control technology for major sources, and sources covered by certain EPA guidance documents, known in our business as RAC-RACM. It also includes basic vehicle inspection and maintenance for urbanized areas, which includes Louisville, and the submission of a new plan demonstrating how the area will attain expeditiously by further reducing emissions of NOx and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. In order to ensure that these protections can be implemented by the new attainment deadline, EPA is proposing that states submit state implementation plan revisions addressing all the moderate area requirements no later than next January. EPA is also proposing that any controls that air agencies determine are needed for meeting those Clean Air Act requirements must be implemented as soon as possible, but no later than January 1st, 2023, except for that inspection and maintenance or vehicle emission testing program, which they are proposing must be implemented no later than 4 years after the effective date of the reclassification. EPA will be taking comment on this proposed action until June 13th, 2022, and a public hearing will be held on May 9th. Next slide, please. So we're in a little unusual spot here. While we didn't demonstrate attainment with the 2018-2020 design value, the area does show attainment with the 2019 to 2021 design set. And we have satisfied all of the required state implementation plan elements. We've prepared a draft redesignation request concurrent with our colleagues at the Kentucky Division for Air Quality, who are also preparing similar requests for Northern Kentucky, and those are both being considered informally by US EPA. We do expect EPA's informal comments in the very near term, and we will then revise our proposal if necessary and propose a draft for public comment thereafter. Once approved by EPA, redesignation to attainment will relieve us of further planning and control requirements. That's the good news. Bad news is we're on a really short time frame here, so we have a lot of work to do. Byron, next slide, please. These deadlines and requirements will require us to work concurrently on a state implementation plan submittal in case EPA does not approve our redesignation request before January. That submittal will include rules to implement RAC-RACM, a 15% plan for submittal in January 2023. And I know that RAC-RACM sounds kind of funny, but it's really an important strategy for reducing emissions of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds from stationary sources within that moderate non-attainment area. It is also a fairly intensive regulatory undertaking that may impact some of the sources of NOx and VOC emissions that you see on this slide. So stay tuned for that work. We'll be bringing you updates as we move forward.
What are the shaded area, for example, non-point VOCs? What's the top
So that,
area versus the solid yellow?
that's a great question. That small kind of fuzzy yellow represents consumer and commercial solvent use. That actually includes my hairspray this morning. It includes paintings and coatings that go on buildings to maintain them. So it's a small subset, but it's actually a fairly large amount of our volatile organic compounds. For the blue, those are Mill Creek's emissions of nitrogen oxides compared to all other sources. And then with the volatile organic compounds, that shaded area represents the Angel share of ethanol that evaporates during the barrel aging process. Any other questions? All right, so while we're working on this, and it is big work, we really encourage everyone, stationary sources regulated by the district, businesses not regulated by the district, and community members alike, to really take advantage of opportunities this year to reduce their emissions. We don't want to violate a standard or to have an exceedance this year. And we all have to be mindful of our own contributions. We hope that businesses, whether regulated by APCD or not, will consider becoming an air quality action partner, the district's program to encourage action on air quality alert days when air pollution levels for ozone or fine particulate matter are forecasted to exceed national health-based standards by developing and implementing an air quality alert day plan. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gary to share some more information about the Air Quality Action Partner Program.
Thank you, Director Hamilton. Might come stand behind you guys here so I can see the presentation, remind myself what I'm talking about. So this Air Quality Action Partners Program is something that we spoke to the board about last year. It originally stemmed from the multi-pollutant stakeholder group that we formed as an agency in 2019 after that non-attainment designation for ozone in 2018. We put together the multi-pollutant stakeholder group to try and get input from stakeholders around the community, both businesses as well as individuals and community groups, on how best to address pollution in Louisville. As an ozone non-attainment area, our main focus was how best to get back into attainment for ozone, but we continually see problems in Louisville with both particulate matter as well as air toxics and other pollutants as well. And a lot of those come from the same sources, so we determined it best to try to find strategies to address pollution on a multi-pollutant basis rather than just focusing on those ozone precursors. And we, aside from those source groups mentioned up there, we had committees for the points, area, and mobile source groups, which are the three sort of groupings under which different emission sources come from. We also had a public outreach committee to focus on how best to continue outreach to the community, and a health committee to try and focus on the impacts of health and how best to improve community health around air quality. As I mentioned, one of those committees was the Point Committee. That is one of the committees that I facilitated that one and co-facilitated the Health Committee. And these are some of the recommendations out of that Point Committee that led to the Air Quality Action Partners Program. All three of these center around encouraging those point sources to find ways to reduce pollution on a voluntary basis, particularly focusing on air quality alert days, those days when we're forecast to have levels of ozone, particulate matter, SO2, or carbon monoxide that exceed the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, and also to recognize companies for those actions and to encourage them to participate in other voluntary programs such as KYXL, the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center, and the EPAD program through the Office of Sustainability here at Louisville Metro. So out of those recommendations, we started the Air Quality Action Partners program last year. The Air Quality Action Partners program encouraged voluntary reductions at point sources, those permitted and registered facilities under APCD regulations. There were 4 different levels of recognition, starting just at the Air Quality Action Partner level. Those are companies that agreed to sign up for air quality alerts and distribute them to all of their employees, as well as to find at least 2 ways to voluntarily take action to cut pollution. Those silver level air quality action partners agreed to the same thing, but they agreed to find one voluntary measure under each of the 3 different categories of emission reduction proposals that we put in the checklist. Those include stationary source reductions, those things that we traditionally think of as pollution sources at these permitted facilities, but also vehicle and fleet emissions, as well as facility and building emissions. The gold level partners agreed to all of that, plus to quantify the effect of their voluntary commitments at the end of the year. And the platinum level partners agreed to all of that, plus to meet at least a 5% reduction in either PM, air toxics, or NOx or VOCs. Ultimately, we ended up having 20 some odd facilities sign up. You can see the distribution from the air quality action partners on the left up to the platinum partners on the right. Most folks hit that middle ground, agreeing to take at least those one commitment from each of the different categories. And this is a distribution by the plant types. You can see most of them were Title V facilities, those major sources under our rules, but there were a fair amount distributed amongst the other types of facilities that we permit here in Louisville, all the way down to even one facility that's exempt from our rules, our permitting requirements anyway, signing up. A map of the locations might be a little hard to see here in the boardroom. You can see they're distributed across the community. We do see clusters along the western border where we see a large cluster of facilities permitted by APCD, but there were facilities from around the county that signed up. We have kicked off signups for the second year of this program. We're asking for folks to sign up by April 30th. Email was sent to all of those permitted and registered facilities again back at the end of March. We also sent out a general announcement on April 1st. There's a link there where you can learn more about the program in general, as well as to find the sign-up form, which is one of the changes we made for our second year of the program. Sign-ups, instead of having to fill out a checklist, print it out and sign it and send it back, or fill it out on their computer and send it back, can simply fill out an online form. We found it to be a lot easier. We've already got almost 20 sign-ups this year and still have almost a couple weeks left before that deadline for the first round of sign-ups. The second change is that everybody who signs up will initially be considered an air quality action partner. Those folks who followed through on their commitments for last year will continue to be recognized at the silver, gold, or platinum level. All new signups at those higher levels will be recognized next year once they certify that they achieved the things that they committed to. The final and most significant change is that we are, in the second year of the program, opening up signups to businesses and organizations beyond those permitted and registered facilities that APCD typically regulates. Anyone can sign up now, sign up their business or organization, become an air quality action partner. As I described before, a whole host of those potential commitments come in the vehicle and fleet emissions category and the facility and buildings category. So these are things like becoming an idle-free partner, agreeing to avoid groundskeeping or building maintenance on air quality alert days. There are simple things that any business or organization could sign up for, and we saw potential to really spread this a little wider than we did in the first year. So we're really encouraging folks to plug this wherever they can. If you know anybody who has a business, small or large, that would like to sign up, there's a link at the top of this presentation, and we'll be glad to send that out after. The link was also in that email that we sent out by Gov Delivery to everybody who signed up for notices. So really easy to sign up. We're really encouraging as many people as possible. As Director Hamilton described, this year and next year are really going to be key to making sure that we maintain that attainment status for ozone to make sure that that redesignation request can go through. And with that, I'll turn it back to Director Hamilton.
So this sounds so simple, but it is truly impactful. And in the sincerest form of flattery, Michelle and Byron's conversation with EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards and others was actually about how EPA might be able to take a program like this nationally. And that's a credit to Byron and Michelle's leadership on this. We hope that everyone will find a way to make reductions this summer and truly drive down those NOx emissions. They come from your tailpipe as well as from stationary sources, and we all can reduce those through some mindfulness. So, thank you very much, Mr. Gary. Are there any questions from the board member?
I do. This type of presentation, is this going to the Air Quality Action Partners so that, you know, are they aware of this type of presentation? Do they understand the need and the impact, and you can communicate with them on any kind of regular basis?
We have not distributed this along with that announcement. The folks that did sign up did get a follow-up email asking for that certification. We've gotten most of them already and seen some quantifiable reductions last summer. We do hope that our regulated community as well as our general public does take the opportunity to join these monthly board meetings. We also present regularly, as Director Hamilton said, at other community groups, including the West Jefferson County Community Task Force. I don't believe this year yet we have given an update to RCAC, but we did last year as well to the Rubbertown Community Action Council.
That's due in May, so
Okay.
that'll be our May topic for that meeting. But we also spoke to Greater Louisville, Inc. Last week about this. And we will be doing some social media distribution of this information and really kind of pushing it as we can. So this.
I would just also add that we have provided lots of information and links to our economic development peers at Metro Louisville and Louisville Forward, and they have great networks that they'll be sharing this out through as well.
And once you're a partner forever, you got to renew every year.
You'll have to renew every year.
And our hope is to update the board on those commitments next month.
Okay.
So we can actually talk about what happened after we put this in place and recognize those companies who made those efforts.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? I just have several. You mentioned, are we going to reformulate our gasoline again?
So it's not that we'll reformulate gasoline again. Reformulated gasoline is a requirement of our state implementation plan.
Right.
But it may be waived by an action from EPA later this spring. So we'll have to wait and see what that actually comes out. They're going to allow the use of E15 gas to be sold instead of E10 during the summer.
Okay.
So,
and my second question, have we stopped inspecting the gasoline stations for vapor recovery? Is that ongoing?
Absolutely. So there are two types of gasoline inspections. We had a program called Stage 2.
Right.
Do you want to?
So stage 2 was a requirement from the nozzle to suck vapors back into the underground tank from your gas tank as they are displayed. Back in the 90s, they changed some rules for automobile manufacturers to include onboard vapor recovery.
Okay.
So that was moving into the vehicles themselves. As that became widespread throughout the fleet, it interacted negatively with the stage 2 systems. So a few years back, we changed our rule for gas stations to require those systems to be removed. So gas station inspection currently consists of making sure the pumps and hoses are all in good working order and observing fuel drops from the truck to the underground tank to make sure that those vapors are being recovered appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to thank Mrs. Hampton and Mr. Geary for an excellent presentation. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
You learn a lot about.
Well, I've got a little bit, Chairman Hilton, I've got a little bit more to go.
Okay.
Tried to sandwich this in today as a way to provide some visuals for the conversation, but in addition to the district's own work to reduce emissions, there are also federal regulatory proposals that continue to drive down emissions and improve air quality locally here in Louisville. So many of you know that we benefit from federal regulations that reduce mobile source emissions, including those that regulate gas mileage and engine standards for cars, trucks, buses, boats, planes. But we also benefit from other federal regulatory requirements that apply on a regional, not rule is a really good example. Since 1999, the Regional Haze Rules calls for state and federal agencies to work together to improve visibility in 156 national parks and wilderness areas, such as the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, the Great Smokies, and Shenandoah. The 2015 ozone standard has a similar regional rule called the Good Neighbor Rule that's intended to reduce ozone-forming nitrogen oxide emissions from being transported by wind across state lines. often over long distances, to what they call downwind states. On April 6th, EPA proposed a federal implementation plan, or a FIP, to address interstate transport pollution under the Good Neighbor provision of the Clean Air Act. So what's a FIP? It's what happens when EPA finds that a state is either not submitted a plan to reduce those emissions or that the plan is not approvable. When that happens, EPA essentially writes the plan. Under this proposed FIP, 26 states, including Kentucky, will be required to eliminate significant contributions to non-attainment or interference with maintenance of the 2015 ozone standard in other states. The FIP proposes nitrogen oxide reductions from coal and natural gas-fired power plants in 25 states, and certain other industrial sources, including cement kilns and reciprocating engines used in natural gas transmission pipelines, both of which are here in Louisville, in 23 states. In many cases, those reductions will come from optimizing controls already in place, and this is much like what LG&E voluntarily does at its Mill Creek station. The 2015 Ozone NAAQS Good Neighbor requirement is a public health initiative of national consequence. But as I've mentioned before, modeling estimates indicate that about 30% of the nitrogen oxides here in Louisville come from outside of our area. So if finalized, we here in Louisville will benefit from this rule beginning next year with the 2023 ozone season. EPA will hold a public hearing on the proposal tomorrow and will accept written comments on the proposed federal implementation plan through June 6th. If EPA finalizes the proposed plan, states still can submit an approvable state implementation plan provided it satisfies the Good Neighbor requirements for EPA's review and approval. It'll essentially replace the federal implementation plan. This process is important to us. We will benefit from those reductions, as will other states. We will keep the board informed as this proposal moves forward. Long overdue, EPA, along with 90 federal agencies, has announced their long-awaited Equity Action Plan, which includes 6 priorities. Developing a comprehensive framework for considering cumulative impacts in relevant EPA decisions, capacity building for underserved communities, developing EPA's own internal community engagement capacity, strengthening EPA's external civil rights compliance program, integrating community science into EPA's research and program implementation, and making EPA's procurement and contracting more equitable. At the White House event announcing the equity plans, President Biden said that advancing equity is not a one-year project, it's a generational commitment. This is actually coming out of an executive order that was passed by Bill Clinton in 1994. So it's taken a long time to see what that framework could look like, and the district looks forward to working with EPA in implementing this important initiative. Getting to the end here. In September of 2029, some of the board members may remember that the district requested and the board approved a disbursement of up to $8,000 from the Air Quality Trust Fund for a planned air quality message campaign and information resources tailored to a 6-neighborhood study area generally referred to as the Green Heart Project, which is part of the University of Louisville's Enviro Institute's Green Heart study, to rigorously and scientifically assess the impact of green space on air quality health in urban communities. To date, the district has been unable to begin this project due to COVID, but the money remains encumbered for this purpose. Due to the passage of time and the Green Heart Project's progress, the district respectfully asks for the board to consider unencumbering this $8,000. The current balance of the Air Quality Trust Fund is $13,917.97. And while we will continue to seek opportunities to participate in and support the Green Heart Project and its activities, as part of our general outreach and engagement activities. We do ask that the board consider at its next meeting unencumbering those funds for general air quality trust fund use. For those unfamiliar, the Air Quality Trust Fund is a fund that the board itself administers. It is a special purpose fund. It cannot support the district's day-to-day operations, but is generally used for air quality improvement and for research. This afternoon, district staff and those staff from our friends in the Office of Resilience and Community Service will partner with Brightside for an Edison Center neighborhood cleanup as part of our commitment to the Mayor's Give a Day celebration of service. If you're free, please join us at 1:30 in the parking lot. Gloves, bags, T-shirts, and even some snacks will be provided. With that, are there any questions from the board on my presentation to this point? One last item. Chief Talley, who with the Office of Resilience and Community Services, and I will note for the board that we're joined this morning by the Director of the Office of Resilience and Community Service, Tamika Laird, will oversee the Safe Outdoor Space, SOS, a temporary project meant to better street homelessness with housing and other resources. Chief Talley connected the Hope Bus, the nonprofit operating partner of SOS, with the district in the hopes for some assistance with the purchase of some electric lawn equipment to safely maintain the site where their residents will live. With that, Hope Bus is asked to present to the board with respect to their project, their request for electric lawn equipment for consideration as part of the Air Quality Trust Fund. I'd like to introduce Stachel. Stachel Busey? Bussey. Please come on up here and come stand behind me. Stachel is the director of the Hope Bus. Let's see, can we see you? Nope, better come back behind me. Now we can see you.
Okay. So is it morning? Oh, it's still morning. Thank you for having me here and for allowing me to come speak today. I never get to get Tamika and Keith in the same room at the same time, so I feel privileged too. It's very sad that Keith is going on about his business somewhere else, but that's not here here. So thank you for inviting me here today. Our project, of course, is a safe outdoor space where we will be able to house, I think, up to 60 homeless houseless individuals. We provide them resources, stability, and safety. We've never tried this before. I keep saying it all the time. People just got to keep being patient with us as we move to our opening. One of the things that we decided to do as a part of this project was help us all to reimagine community and help us all be better neighbors, but also how to reintegrate our residents into society. A part of our project includes allowing up 12 to 15 of our residents being able to have jobs or they get weekly stipends to do certain things. Some of them, of course, while we're working with Goodwill, will be able to leave in the mornings. Others of them will stay on the site and work. Some of what our responsibilities is at the Hope Village is we will clean, we will do those kind of things and maintain our own village. But we want our residents to be able to do that and employ them to do that and give them a stipend for that. And so what we're asking you for today is items to help us do that, to be able to take care of our lawn, to be able to take care of the grass. I joke all the time and say that that's one of my pastimes, one of my favorite pastimes, but that's not my responsibility at the village. I actually have to run the thing and not cut the grass. And so we're asking today that you help assist us employ our residents and help them be, help integrate them into society, help reintegrate them back into society, and help us purchase some equipment to be able to hire 4 or 5 of them to take care of all the grass and the gardening and the trimming and all of those things.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the project, it's my understanding, Stachel, that you will have 48 heavy-duty tents on firm surfaces. And when we talk about maintaining that lawn, we're really maintaining people's living room.
Yeah.
So
what it is for people who don't know, if you haven't read it, it's really an outdoor space. It's trying to do something in this transitional kind of manner. Sometimes we want people to go from being on the streets to right to housing. And we've seen on the streets that that doesn't necessarily work. Many of them end up back on the street. And so what we're trying to do is, how do we do something like outside, inside? And so this is their home. It's our home, all of our homes, for the next year. And the grass over there does grow pretty fast. It just got cut the other day. And so it's not just maintaining outside, but it's really keeping our house clean. It's keeping our stuff looking good. And also, let's just be truthful about what could happen. That grass starts getting hot, then we start finding all kind of things. We want to make sure people are not disposing of trash, of needles, of those kind of things once in the grass, start throwing things in trash and all of that. So we're trying to really prevent that and making sure that we kind of maintain that space. Because like you said, it is a home now. So not just up to 60 houses individuals, but also 16 staff who will have to be there as well.
Any questions from the board members or Tamika, Chief Talley?
So I need some money to buy line equipment?
Yes, sir. Mr. Keefe, is that what I'm asking for? Am I asking for?
Yeah,
Okay.
for specifically for electric.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We want to be environmentally friendly.
That's true, okay. Okay.
And then just for the board, I just want to add that this project is an important piece of Metro's overall homelessness and affordable housing scheme. And so it's a four-pronged effort. Safe outdoor space is just the first part. And so from safe outdoor space, we get folks from just randomly being out on the street into a confined area where they can be provided services, and we can start to build that relationship with them, start to transition them to other forms of housing. And so it'd be safe outdoor space into transitional or bridge housing. Some folks then will move on to permanent supportive housing. There'll be those who will never be able to live totally on their own. And so there'll be permanent supportive housing for those individuals, but then ultimately to get those who can transition into affordable housing and that stable environment. So this is part of an overall effort by the city to address homelessness and affordable housing in our community.
And a big part of that, at the basis of all of this, is poverty, right? People need to generate some kind of income,
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do for our residents. What does it mean to have a bank account? What does it mean to really reintegrate and reintroduce some kind of normalcy and safety and stability for them? So it's very important that we, walk them through those things, and we're there with them.
Do you have an idea of what the dollar amount would be to fulfill the need for the maintenance equipment?
I can probably help out with that.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Michelle Keith, Director of Program Planning. This is similar as to the package that we have provided through our community equipment grant, the Lawn Care for Cleaner Air Community Equipment Grant. That grant program has closed for this quarter or this half of the year. But to give you an idea of the kind of package that we've awarded there, that was right around $1,400. And that included a mower with an extra battery. It included the string trimmer, and it included a blower vac as well. So all that trio of equipment plus the extra battery pack that powers all of those things came in right under $1,500.
Is that enough is the question I would have.
I think that's a question of the size of the property and the frequency of the need.
Yeah, so I think it's enough to start with. I don't know, I didn't look up prices. But I've kind of been leaning on Mr. Talley for that. If we could have two sets of it, I'm sure that would be, even more efficient for what we're trying to do.
How big's the property? I mean,
Is it a 100-acre lot or what?
It's a lot of land.
A lot of land. Where are they located?
212 College Street.
Old Captain.
If you can picture it, there's a church on the front part. What's that, Floyd?
Yeah, it's
The church is on the front part.
It's Brook.
Yes, Brook Street.
Brook Street, okay.
And then it's got another building sits back behind the church that the Metro also owns that will ultimately be renovated for bridge housing on the site. That'll be adjacent to the safe outdoor space. But there's a substantial amount of green space around where the church is and on the front part of that property that needs to be addressed.
So it may be, I get 2 mowers, 2 string trimmers,
right.
blower vac.
Good morning, everybody. I think we're just all trying
This is great.
bombard you all.
This is great.
Hello, my name is Tamika Laird, and I'm the Director for the Office of Resilience and Community Services. You all have great questions. So I just want to give you some accurate answers here. So it says the typical square foot size is about 10,018 square feet.
Okay.
So I would say, I would urge on the side of saying that they need multiple.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 acres.
2 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the commitment that we've made, not just to our space, but we've made the commitment to other surrounding businesses and other people to help keep their space clean as well.
Okay.
And I can propose that we would like to approve an up to amount that the district can make the purchasing of the equipment and then provide the final total back to the board.
When they came and cut yesterday, it was 3 of them, the Metro people, there's 3 of them working on one.
Dr. May, you have something to say?
I just wanted to know if there was a designated place for storing the equipment already, or is that another need that's gonna be, of a shed or something like that?
A shed.
A shed. Thanks, great question. Right now, lean on Louisville Grove.
Yeah.
Louisville Groves did, donate us a container, but that container will probably be full of stuff that we'll need for storage, so I would consider having a shed to store these kind of things.
Because you just want to prevent, it being stolen, you know.
Yes, ma'am, you're absolutely.
You are correct in saying, so right now they're actually outfitting the whole location for the safe outdoor space. So they'll have a trailer on site for the actual, for the whole bus to be able to have their staff and also do the intake process. On top of that, they will have an actual storage container because these individuals do have belongings and valuables with them. So they'll be able to store their stuff on site where it does not affect their overall housing space. Because the actual housing space that they'll be utilizing will be 10.
Yeah.
So you know how much space is in the tent, which they're pretty good size, but we want to make sure that they can be able to move around and be able to be comfortable.
Right.
So a shed would be great.
Yes.
Look, if we're going to put in our ad, we're going to go all the way out there. Might as well. So a shed would be awesome for us to be able to store the actual equipment to keep it safe and dry, and then also as far as is around weather. So that would be awesome to have that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to the security question, once it opens, the site there'll be people on site 24/7. So it will never be there by itself once the site opens. Seychelle and her team will have people on site, and it'll be completely fenced in, and they will control ingress and egress from the facility.
Then also, the whole bus has a website where they're actually looking for donations around food and other things that they will need to actually have to operate the overall site. So if you want that information, we can provide that. So that way, if you know of anyone, any companies that would like to actually donate to help this overall effort, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, the church, community groups, social clubs that they're in, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be giving grass cutting lessons on Mondays and Wednesdays.
So what's the balance in the fund?
13,900.
That includes the 8 or not?
It includes the 8.
Okay.
So with respect to that, you know, just as we're going to consider at next month's board meeting that decision to unencumber that $8,000, we will put together a written proposal based on Seychelle's presentation today, an estimate of some costs. We'll bring that to the board as new business at next month's meeting as well.
Be great.
And so the basis of that would be a shed and 2 sets of, in essence, is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, take a look and make sure that that would, you know, fit the need for the space. That sounds like it.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all
for
so
sharing
much.
it with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done now. Believe it or not.
Well, thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Really, we look forward to that at the May meeting. The board can act on that at the next meeting. Thank you so much for coming and sharing it with us. Okay, who are we? Air quality data.
Chairman Hilton?
Yes.
Brief pause. I believe we have lost the camera feed from the Edison room here.
Okay.
Give me just a moment to get that back online.
Okay.
Stacey, we have a quorum here. We might be able to proceed, I suppose, without. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, shall we, see, he'll be right back. Okay.
I'm not sure why we have lost the feed, though, to be honest. More technical issues, of course.
No.
And I have to ask questions.
We love those speakers. Don't stop. Neither you nor Dr. May.
Can I ask a question while we're sitting here? Or we gotta wait?
Well, I think he's trying to reboot that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why my computer crashed there. It had power left. I plugged it in to be sure that wasn't it, but my computer just crashed. Oh, here we are.
Great.
Okay, Mike. Okay.
My question relates to why wait a month? If we set an upset limit of, say, $4,000 or $5,000.
It's not listed in our agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
present the information and then
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I was at the hour clock data. Are there any questions regarding the PM 2.5 or the 8-hour ozone monitoring report?
And board members, there is no air toxics report this month.
Okay.
We are standing up our photochemical assessment monitoring site to begin being ready to acquire data starting on its June 1st requirement deadline. And unfortunately, we were waylaid in terms of getting some necessary maintenance equipment and standards. So that's all in place, and our staff are working diligently to get everything ready there.
Any questions?
Quality reports look good.
Look, they're very good. The enforcement status summary, are any questions regarding that report? I didn't have anything marked on that one. That looks good. Moving on to the access mission event, our reports. Oh, I had something. I guess I didn't have anything on that one either. That looked good. Any questions on that one? Mm-hmm. And also the complaint investigation status summary. I don't think I designated anything, no questions on that. Any questions from board members on that one?
Lively reading as usual.
And we back to the lawn care, and that looks good. Michelle?
Electric lawn equipment not only, is good for the neighborhood, but it's really good for the environment. And
it is.
It really reduces a tremendous amount of summertime nitrogen oxides. Mm-hmm. Our current rebate program, Lawn Care for Cleaner Air, we really encourage people as lawn season gears up here to consider trading in that gas-powered equipment, purchasing some electrical equipment, and we will reimburse you for some of that with a rebate.
Okay.
So,
they made a big improvement in the batteries for these lawnmowers. Big improvement. They wouldn't last very long. I understand the newer version, the batteries are a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking forward to more good news about this one. Are there any questions from board members regarding any of these reports?
Not from me.
So, looks like we have finished our agenda. I would like to thank everyone for your attendance. I will now adjourn this monthly meeting of the board, and thank you for your attendance and participation. The next board meeting is Wednesday, May 18th at 10 a.m. Again, thank you.